Hello friends, very exciting day at Secret Level. As you can see behind me, we have a whole new brewing setup. Not exclusively new, but very new to me. It's gently used and gently broken in. But here we have a 20-gallon spike boil kettle and 20-gallon spike mash tun, all powered by the Aubrey Cube, providing 240 volts, 5,500 watts of power to the boil kettle, which we'll be mostly using for as a brew in a bag system. We'll be having a brew bag in there, the false bottom, and we're going to run that as our primary system going forward. So why am I moving away from Anvil Foundry? Well, Anvil Foundry is great, but it's not terribly efficient. It also doesn't allow me to do split batches very easily because it can brew max of about 8-9 gallons considering mash volume and all that. And it's not very efficient with bigger beers. So it's hard to brew bigger beers and it's hard to host collaborations on it simply due to efficiency and volume issues. So I'm very excited to switch to these 20-gallon kettles, codename Burger King, codename Miller Lite. So stick with me as I test them out with the new brew. So let's go make a Witbier.
And the first brew on a new system is a very fun one and a special one to me. And it all starts with a story of my wife and I going to Bruges, Belgium last year. So last November we went and had an absolute blast. So we had amazing waffles, Belgian chocolate, Belgian food, and more so than anything else, of course, Belgian beers. And those blew us away. And especially one that we had that I didn't think would surprise me and blow me away as much is a local wit beer from Bruges. So the brewery there, the Half Man, the Half Moon in English, is a super old school brewery, and they've been brewing this wit beer and brewing period for centuries. So this beer is very old with old roots, and they have lots of amazing beers, but more than anything, their wit beer kind of blew me away. I had it a number of times on my trip, and there was just an explosion of this like navel orange flavor and aroma, light, fluffy body, pretty restrained on the phenols, but still there supporting the body. But it's just like straight orange juice, and unlike any wit beer that I've really had. So upon my return, I immediately regretted not bringing any back with me. So I didn't have many choices, but I knew I had to get this beer into the US and I had to brew some sort of a clone of it. But where do I find the yeast for this beer? So the yeast for this beer isn't available anywhere in the US. Just regular wit beers, which to me taste nothing like Blanche de Bruges. It's the name of this beer, and here it is here. And I finally did get my hands on this, as you could see. I found a gentleman online that was willing to help me out, and I paid more than I like to admit to get like 5 bottles of Blanche de Bruges shipped to me, and I was ecstatic. And so my journey wasn't over there. At that point, I had to actually take the dregs or the leftover yeast from the bottom of the bottle and try to propagate it so that I could revive this yeast and kind of breed it. So with that, I opened 2 bottles, poured out the contents and drank them, but I left a little bit at the bottom, just the yeast that hasn't settled out. I tried not to shake them at all, and I poured contents of bottoms of 2 bottles into a 150 milliliter starter. Ran that for 3 or 4 days. I was a bit slow to take off, which made me pretty nervous, and then eventually did bubble a little bit of foam, and then we went up to a 500 milliliter starter. And then it was the moment of truth to chill, decant it a little bit, and see if it could smell or taste it. It taste anything like it, and it was good. I got a hint of Blanche de Bruges in there, which was very good news. Obviously, fresh starter isn't going to taste like the finished beer. There's no hops. It wasn't properly fermented, but it was signs of greatness, and so I was ecstatic. I was ready to brew with that. So all that's left is to brew the beer. So that's exactly what I did. I started out by adding in the brew hardware false bottom into the boil kettle, filled it with water, and added a little bit of calcium chloride and lactic acid to get my pH within the mashing range. I'll leave the water profile below. Once the water was heated up, I added the brew bag and mashed in with a somewhat traditional wit beer grain bill. I went with 48% two-row, 25% red wheat, 22% flaked wheat, and 5% flaked oats. Yes, most people use Belgian Pilsner malt for that, but I've actually read in a bunch of places that the Belgian Pilsners and Pilsner malts in general have low free amino acid content, which brings out the phenolics in the beer. So like in Belgian beers, you have more pepper and clove, but I was trying to avoid that. I was going for more like super orangey vibe with some phenol supporting that all together. So I went with 2-row that has a free amino nitrogen content that's slightly higher. So at that point I mashed in for about 90 minutes before mashing out and pulling the bag out of the system. For hops, I went with 13 ABU Columbus for 60 minutes, nothing crazy, pretty low. 1.5 ounce addition of Nelson Sauvin at 0 minutes, along with zest from 5 Caracara oranges and zest from another 5 navel oranges, which by the way took forever to zest. So I'm really hoping that these beers come out banging here. And this was for about 8-gallon batch because I split this in a number of ways. To try to mess around with the yeast and also do all sorts of different things. So first variation was fermented at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and I let that rise high, so pretty standard ale fermentation schedule. The second version I fermented at 62 degrees the entire time, so 62 Fahrenheit just to suppress the phenolics. What I read about Hefeweizen yeast and Witbier yeast is that if you keep them at 62 degrees Fahrenheit, they're not going to be expressing clove, phenols, pepper nearly as much as the fruit, and the fruit would come out a little bit more. So that's pretty much it. But just when you thought I had 2 beers to taste, we actually have 3, because I took some of the 62 degree fermented Witbier and put a bunch of strawberries in it. So I have a third version of that we're gonna drink. So that's pretty much it for the beers. Let's do a quick triangle test, see if I could tell the odd one out between 62 and 68 degree fermentation temperature beers, and then see how they are. Let's go. All right, moment of truth. So I poured 2 cups of the 68 degree Fahrenheit fermented beer and 1 cup of the 62 degree fermented beer. I labeled them, put the cups down, poured them in while I knew. Wife mixed them up, and I just mixed them up again just to be safe. So I have no idea which one's which. I weighed them, so the cups have an equal amount of beer in them, and I can't see the color if there is a color difference, so I won't know it. So we're purely going off of flavor and aroma. So let's get into it. I'm excited to find out which one's which and get tasting. Although I did taste this beer already and it's pretty damn good. So I'm excited to, I haven't tried the 68 Fahrenheit, so let's try that one. Very orangey. It does have that like navel orange core body, maybe a little bit of sourdough bread on top. Like fuzzy orange, maybe even fuzzy peach in there. Very low subtle phenolics, although I do get a tiny bit of clove. How's this? This doesn't have as much of aroma as the first one. Interesting. Okay, it smells kind of different. Tastes a little bit more boozy to me, a little bit more peachy. Okay, interesting. This one's a bit more peachy. This one's a little bit more orangey. This one has a little peach note. Let's just double check. Yeah, definitely. Okay. And sample number 3. I can't put my finger on that. It's kind of like an apricot peach kind of thing going on. Okay, a little navel orange body. This reminds me of the number 2, not the number 1. Number 1's a lot more fruity, so I think that's at 62 Fahrenheit. Let's just double check. This is way more orangey and way closer to the original version. So, moment of truth, 62, 68, and this is another 68. Yep, here you go. I identified the odd beer out, and it does taste pretty different. I don't know what you get, like a marmalade, kind of peach rings, kind of a yeasty vibe, honestly. 62 Fahrenheit version is pretty clean. In terms of fermentation character, it just lets the orange pop and stand out. So, I mean, it does have an orange ester, but it's so much of a powerful fruity orange ester than these two. Really cool. So, this compares pretty well with Blanche de Bruges, and I'm actually going to do that next. So, let me taste 62 degree version against Blanche de Bruges and see how that comes out. So, we'll be back in a sec. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, their beers. I did get some yeast sediment in here, so it does look a bit hazier now than it did a minute ago, but overall, like a hue lighter, like 1 or 2 SRM lighter than mine. Mine has a little darker hue to it. Both are pretty see-through, which unfortunately I wanted it to be hazy because this is originally hazy when it's poured from keg in Bruges. And this was poured from a tab in Bruges, although I did can a few, made this cool label just to mess around, use some art. But I'm gonna set these aside and try to get into the tasting. So I know what this tastes like. I've been drinking this for the past few weeks, but I haven't had this in a month or two since I did the whole project. I let that beer ferment, so time to get into it. Oh my God, it's so much more powerful. There's like a zesty lime in here or something. It's like lime zest is just directly added into glass or keg or something. Maybe it's a secret, maybe it's a trick here. Wow, and the flavor, it's so zesty, limey, lemony. So maybe they actually use a lot of lemon peel as opposed to orange, although it has that orangey, lemony flavor to it. I'm not really sure. Totally different though, like I could tell this beer apart from this in a second, but not bad. It does has like hints. It has a yeasty like undercharacter that this has, but I feel like they either have a totally different fermentation temperature than 68 or 62, but 62 degree version was closer to it. But it's this totally limey lemony thing, and maybe terroir comes into an equation here, because I don't know if they could get Florida like Navel or Caracara oranges in Belgium or Bruges. It'd probably be pretty expensive to put in every bottle of this beer, especially if it's drank by locals all the time, to keep it somewhat reasonably priced. So maybe they get lemons somewhere from Europe, and maybe those lemons are quite different. Maybe they get limes, maybe they get European oranges of some sort. I don't really know about, but this reminds me why I fell in love with that beer. Very unique, very cool, super zesty. It's like the essence of lemon zest is what I'm thinking of it now. When I was drinking it fresh in Bruges, I got fresh oranges, which is what I get out of here. Although maybe I would lean to try a new orange variety to make it pop a little bit more, or use even more orange zest. My poor wrist. I'm not gonna be happy about that, but I'm rebrewing that again for sure. Might try a little lower temperature, and might try a whole bunch of lemon peel along with orange peel, maybe even a little bit of lime zest. Yeah, so I'm gonna throw that in next time. But in the meantime, I'm gonna sit out here and enjoy this one before last launch to brew. So I do have the strawberry version, which I don't know if I have time to review today after drinking all these beers, but maybe I'll come back to that tomorrow and talk about the strawberry version. So stay tuned for that in a second. It's so pungent, it's great. I'm sorry, it's kind of raining right now. It's starting to. Damn it. But we're gonna roll through it. Nope. I'm gonna put away the camera. All right, so I just got rained on. I brought the beers inside. We're just gonna keep rolling with it. So yes, we have, that was hilarious. But now it's sunny. So regular version here. And story behind the name, right? So Blanche de Bruges is their original Bruges beer that's brewed there, but this is Blanche de Hof because I'm in Hoffman Estates and that's where I brewed this beer. So I named it after the city, and it's the city wit. That's what I'm going with. That's the original. Here we have the strawberry. So this is Blanche de Hof strawberry fields. So this got, for 2.5 gallons of the version fermented at 62 degrees Fahrenheit, this received 5 pounds of fresh strawberries. It's strawberry season here in Illinois, it's June. So I dumped those in there whole. I froze them overnight just to get rid of the bacteria, and then basically didn't do anything else. I threw them in the fermenter the next day, pretty much frozen still. And then I added another pound of puree from our local Hispanic store. So it's strawberry puree that I added in, and that was pretty much it. I let it sit for about a week, cold crashed, and kegged. So here we have these two beauties. It does have a slightly reddish hue, not really red, but it's still hazy, so I think that amplifies the redness or the strawberry kind of color. But if you really want like red color, I think probably go with raspberries a little bit, but nonetheless, the flavor on this is pretty spot on strawberry. So I'm just gonna taste this as a baseline, the regular beer. Yep, 62-degree version, still tasting awesome. And now time for the strawberries. So, color, very hazy. Boys and girls, if you don't use a pectin enzyme, you're gonna get hazy beer. And strawberries don't have that much pectin in them, just enough to impart the haze. But if a fruit has a lot of pectin in it, it's gonna impart a ton of haze, but it's also going to create gelatin within your beer. So it's gonna gelatinize some of the beer because the compounds in the fruit interacting with your beer. So you want to add pectin enzyme. I didn't, and I love the haze from it, and strawberries don't have that much pectin, so I think we're good. Nonetheless, the aroma is pretty bonkers, fresh strawberries, and this beer is only 5 or so percent, so 5.5, right? Yes. So it's a pretty light beer base. It doesn't have heavy hop flavors or heavy malt flavors. It's a pretty clean base, so I think adding strawberries to something like this is perfect. Otherwise, it's a pretty light flavor, so they're pretty easily overpowered. But here, it kind of really complements the beer. Oh man, that ripe strawberry flavor is awesome. Sorry, aroma. But the flavor is also pretty spot on. It has a little bit of tartness to it, but otherwise it's a pretty in-your-face strawberry. No mistake in this. It's a strawberry, but it's kind of like underripe strawberry flavor is what I get for this one. At first it's like a ripe, and then it turns into underripe, and then turns into like a lemony orange after that. Pretty cool and interesting. It almost tastes like a lemonade at the end. Like strawberry lemonade is a big part of what I get here. Cool. To make the flavor super ripe or overripe strawberry, I think I'd maybe add a little bit of strawberry extract in here to complement the actual strawberry. So it should be like super in your face strawberries. And I think that would make people go bonkers for this beer. Like at a festival, people would love the heck out of this. Otherwise, it's a nice drinking. It's a slight tart note. I think the pH dropped a little bit with the strawberries or something, but it does have a tart note, so it's gonna be interesting. And I love what the technique did. Whole strawberries, stems and all. I took out like big leaves that were falling off, but I threw in otherwise everything. I didn't really husk the strawberries. I just threw them in whole, and I think that really did the trick. The greens might have some sort of flavor compound in them that imparts the flavor, but I think it also imparts that somewhat unripe flavor, so maybe that's what we're getting here. Otherwise, man, killer, super saturated strawberry flavor. I'm honestly kind of surprised with how much I came through. I mean, I was kind of praying for that with all the strawberries that I added, but nonetheless, awesome beer. So is this. I'm looking forward to drinking this, especially as it's summer here. It's going to be great. So yeah, I'm sending these out to Patreon subscribers. So subscribe to Patreon and support me as much as you can. Yeah, otherwise loving it. I'll share the recipe for this, and I'll be sending out some yeast samples to my friends to try too. So hope you get to try Blanche de Bruges. Hope you get to go to Belgium and try some of the beers or something similar, because Belgian wits are very different from American wits. And nonetheless, fun style of brew, 10 out of 10. We'll brew again. Catch y'all later.